Good afternoon. My name is Dan Denman, and today I'm giving my research presentation on a cover crops integration plan into Demondale Farms. So what really is the purpose of this project? In order to understand that, we have to have an understanding of the current situation that is going on in agriculture. Currently in ag, margins are slim, and they are getting slimmer. Now what is causing this is truly the rise in input prices as well as a decrease in the overall commodity price. Now these two things result in an attitude of consumers of tight budgets. They will not spend any money on any untried and unproven methods that show quick returns. Instead, they have to be tighter with their management practices and are even less open and considerate to any new management practices that anyone can proceed. So, with that in mind, our proposal has to be geared towards understanding the current situation the farm is in while developing a plan to integrate cover crops into Demondale Farms. So before we can really talk about the plan, we need to talk about what the real benefits are in cover crops. We can make this fairly simple by stating that cover crops have three main benefits. We have the soil benefits, the environmental benefits, and we have forage for dairy cows. Now, soil benefits can be summarized simply by increasing soil health and overall productivity of the soil. Ways cover crops can accomplish this are by increasing organic matter and decreasing nutrient runoff rates. Now, environmental benefits can be achieved through cover crops by the reduction in erosion and the reduction in nutrient runoff as well, thus providing the farmer with environmental protection across its fields. And finally, the last benefit we can expect to see are forages for dairy cows. Certain cover crops have the ability to produce a high energy feed value with a relatively high protein content at a fairly cheap cost, which makes it ideal for feeding dairy cows. So what truly are cover crops? What are we talking about as far as individual plants? Well, the USDA provides the cover crop chart, which will help us understand truly what cover crops are. We can break cover crops down into two main categories, warm and cool season. From those two categories, we can continually break them down into grass and broadleaf crops, and even farther yet, we can break broadleaf crops down into simply legume cover crops. Now, having an understanding of this chart and the specific types of crops we're talking about will allow the producer to make thorough crop choices based on the goals that I set for them in their project plan. So before we could develop the plan, we needed to have an understanding of the current situation and issues that this farm is facing. So currently the operation is row cropping 1,400 acres while milking 200 Holstein cows. They're primarily in a corn-soy rotation, and no cover crops are at this time being used in the system. And also some current issues that are plaguing the farm are soil compaction, increased cattle feeding cost, and depleting soil conditions. So with these three large issues in mind and encompassing the overall style of the operation, I developed a 2-year cover crop integration plan for this farm. So what truly is the plan? It's set around a 2-year implementation of cover crops. The first year is really based on getting the farm used to the idea of cover crops while allowing them to get their feet wet and see some of the returns that cover crops can provide with them. So the first goal of year one is that half of all corn acres are planted with tillage radishes on the outside 100 feet of all fields. This is geared specifically towards a reduction in soil compaction. As we know, soil compaction greatly reduces yields and the overall productivity of the soil. However, tillage radishes are an expensive fix for soil compaction, but by reducing the parameters to only 100 feet of the field, we greatly reduce the cost of the tillage radishes while greatly affecting the most crucial areas that soil compaction affects, which is the outsides of the field or high traffic areas. The second goal is that half of all corn acres are planted with a cool season grass cover crop. Now, what is a cool season grass cover crop? We can look back at the USDA chart and see that a cool season grass cover crop could be barley, oats, wheat, cereal rye, triticale, or annual fescue. With that in mind, the goal of this application is to reduce runoff from the fields as well as retain nutrients and increase the soil productivity by increasing organic matter within the soil. The third goal is that half of all the soybean ground is planted with a mix of cool season legumes, with at least one half of that mix being hairy veg. Now, we are very specific on half of the mix being hairy vetch because of the abilities of the cover crop hairy vetch. Hairy vetch has the ability to produce up to 60 pounds of nitrogen for the crop to follow it. So in the spring, when the ground is fit to put the hairy vetch into the soil and corn is planted behind the soybeans, that corn has the access to 60 pounds of nitrogen provided by the plant that was not applied by the producer. It's really quite amazing what hairy vetch can do in a cover cropping system. And the fourth goal of the first year will be that 1/4 of all the soybean ground is planted with triticale to be chopped in the spring for cow feed. Now, triticale is a cross between wheat and rye, and it shows the benefits of both those, providing higher protein with wheat and providing the higher energy value that is with rye. And if chopped at the right time, it is ideal for cow feed. So if the goals in the first year have been accomplished, we can then proceed to goals for year 2. Now, as you're going to see, year 2's goals really stress the importance of expanding the use of cover crops. The first year was really getting the operations feet wet so they could see some of the returns. But this year, it's all about complete integration. So the first goal is that all corn acres are planted with tillage radishes on the outside 100 feet of the field in an attempt to eliminate soil compaction. The second goal is that all corn acres are planted with a cool season grass cover crop, thus reducing erosion, runoff, and increasing soil nutrient retention. Now, 5/8 of all the soybean ground is planted with a mixture of cool seeds and legumes, with hairy vetch making up 50% of the mix. Once again, I'll note hairy vetch is essential in this mix. And the fourth goal for the second year is that the remaining 3/8 of the soybean ground is planted with triticale to be chopped in the spring for cow feed, as we've discussed prior. So what can we really expect when this plan has been integrated completely on the farm? Well, we can expect decreased in soil compaction. In the top right-hand corner of the screen, you can see tillage radishes. And this particular radish grew 16 inches down into the ground, busting up any kind of soil compaction or plow pan that may have formed, thus increasing the soil health dramatically. Now, our second goal is we can also increase general soil health. In the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you can see a cereal rye cover crop being grown. This will greatly increase the soil organic matter of the soil while reducing runoff. Our fourth goal is that we have affordable cattle feed. As you can see in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, these cows are being fed triticalage, which is great feed for the cows, which allows cheap growth rates. So currently, no farmer is going to make any of these decisions without understanding the financial impact. So for each cover crop operation that I have presented, I've outlined the cost and the expected net return. And as you can see, each application of cover crops has a positive net return in the first year, something that is very important to all dairy or grain farmers during this current time in agriculture. So just some closing remarks. Cover crops have 3 benefits that will greatly benefit Demondale Farms as an operation: soil benefits, environmental benefits, and forage for dairy cows. All 3 of these benefits will greatly increase the productivity of the farm as a whole, stretching from the row crops to the cows themselves. And for that reason, along with the cheap input cost and the positive net return, I believe that Demondale Farms should move on a path of integration with cover crops. These are the sources I've used for my photos and information. I want to thank you all for your time, and have a good rest of your day.